Hi there. Welcome to the Basement League Show. And this is the presentation of the Harrowing Chronicles, The Adventures of the Crimson One, written by AJ Scream of the Basement League Show. This is a science fiction saga. We hope you enjoy it, and please like and subscribe. Warning: this contains scenes unsuitable for listeners under the age of 10, unless attended by a parent or a guardian.
Earth was nothing but a blue marble floating amongst the stars, long forgotten against the vast void of galaxies and universes. 16-year-old Damien Rey stood barely 5 feet tall, lean as a sapling and twice as wiry, with sloping shoulders that made his lanky frame look even smaller. He spent more hours in his life lost in the comic books than on the cracked sidewalks of Houston's Fifth Ward. He worshiped heroes like Icon that looked just like him, but were aliens who became an Earth defender, and dreamed of striding amongst the stars and gleaming armor far from the gritty alleyways he called home. Anywhere beyond the east side's rusted chain-linked fences and flickering streetlights humming with the buzz of roaches sounded better than the place he'd ever known. His father, once a local boxing hopeful, was now a junkie whose gaunt cheeks and sunken eyes tracked a constant tremor in his hands. Damien's last good memory of him was a twisted needle in palm, muttering for just one hit as empty bottles clinked on the kitchen floor. His mother sat at the kitchen table, silent and hollow, cradling a half-empty whiskey bottle as she stared at the peeling wallpaper. She drank to blot out the blackened bruises, both those she'd received and those she'd inflicted, so that in the morning she could pretend the screams never happened. The Fifth Ward was a tapestry of desperation. Graffiti-tagged walls advertised midnight needle exchanges as casually as church bake sales. Street vendors hawked counterfeit DVDs from cardboard boxes while rats skittered across broken pavement. Shadowed doorways spilled light onto the sidewalk, where men and women dealt in pills, powder, and broken promises. Through it all, Damien slipped quietly, a ghost, clutching battered trade-back paperbacks and a half-worn satchel, hoping the next page might carry him away to a brighter world. When the Mueller family found him, shivering in the hallway after another fight with his father, they became his lifeline. Mrs. Mueller offered a bowl after bowl of hot stew with gentle patience. Mr. Mueller, a retired school janitor, patched Damien's threadbare sneakers with duct tape and a smile. They never asked where he'd been or why his eyes were always so wary. In a place where every night threatened to swallow him whole, the kindness was the closest Damien came to believing that heroes might still exist, even only in the quiet strength of those who reached out when nobody else will. Damien spent 5 nights a week at Dumont's gym as a teenager, a squat bricked hall just off Lyons Avenue in the Fifth Ward. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of leather, sweat, and chalk dust. Faded pennants from long past tournaments drooped from the rafters, and a single fluorescent bulb overhead flickered in time with the steady thump of gloves on heavy bags. Each night, Damien wrapped his hands in tattered gauze and hammered the leather until his knuckles bled. Listening to the deep thwack, thwack, echo from the cavernous space. He didn't just crave muscle to look the part. He needed to feel something beyond the gnawing hunger and bone-deep fear that haunted him at home. Dumont's gym had been the life's work of Coach Alphonse Dumont, a former regional champion whose precise footwork and iron chin had made him a local legend. Alphonse recognized in Damien a spark of raw determination and took him under his wing. He refined the boy's stance, drilled him on the pivot and parry, and introduced him to the ritual of early morning road work through the fog-choked streets. Under Alphonse's patience and guidance, Damien learned to steady his breath, tighten his core, and unleash measured power, a lesson in control that reached far beyond the ring. Then came the accident. On a misty summer morning, Coach Dumont slipped from his canoe during a training retreat at Clear Lake. By the time help arrived, the water had claimed him. His death left the gym hollow. His son, Marcus, inherited the reins, but he was more interested in flashing promotions and signing the next viral sensation than nurturing the quiet grit of a small framed kid who showed up night after night. The punching bags hung forlornly, the ring corners gathered dusk, and Damien often found himself alone under the flickering light, guided only by the echo of Alphonse's steady voice in his memory. Yet it was in that underattended gym that Damien often found himself alone. Yet it was in that underattended gym that Damien forged the strength and discipline he would carry with him amongst the stars. Damien's father had once been the undisputed welterweight champion of the 6th District, a local legend whose lightning-fast jab and iron chin carried him through 20 straight victories. He was celebrated in crowded halls and smoky bars, a man whose name was cheered whenever his boots echoed down the main street. But after a brutal sparring accident left his master hand fractured in 3 places, everything began to unravel. Prescribed powerful painkillers to dull the agony, he soon found himself dependent on their fleeting relief. He still punched the clock each morning at the Pasadena refinery, his broad shoulders bent beneath the weight of steel beams and stifling heat. Yet, even in the midst of the whir of furnaces and the hiss of steam, his mind churned with the thoughts of escape. By the time the whistle blew, his hands, once capable of crushing ribs and dislocating jaws, were shaking, his veins eager for the pills or the sharper sting of a needle. Back home, the bottle became his closest companion. The bitterness of broken dreams fermented into the dark cloud over every room he entered. When his wife faltered under the weight of his rage, he struck out at her with the same fist that once earned him glory. And when Damien trembled in the doorway, flinching at every raised hand, his father's shadow loomed larger than any champion's spotlight. In the relentless darkness of that house, the boy learned to steel himself, clutching memories of his father's glory, even as those days slipped further into a distant echo. It began on a sticky Thursday afternoon. Damien was stepping around the cracked asphalt of Dumont's gym parking lot when he heard a sharp plea cut through the afternoon hum. A young woman with dark hair and a tight bun, and a thick glasses was pinned against a graffiti scrawled brick by Colback, his father's dealer and loan shark buddy. A hulking man who used his bulk as menace to terrorize the neighborhood's older residents as well as children. Colback's biceps, strained against his t-shirt, were all show. Gym muscles with no real test, as Coach Dumont used to say. And Damien knew it from watching boxing matches that brute force and size alone meant very little. The girl clutched a battered computer bag under one arm. The edge of a second-hand laptop peeked out like a wounded bird ready to fly. Damien stepped between the girl and the giant man, telling Kobach to back up. Kobach, not one to be remiss, looked Damien up and down, recognizing the boy. He grinned and cracked his knuckles. Kobach swung first, a wild overhand right that cut through the air like a tree branch crashing down. Damien tucked low, heart hammering tight, and unleashed the practice sequence. Jab cross to the ribs, pivot, then a precision uppercut that snapped Kobach's head back. The loan shark staggered, clutching his jaw as gravel sprayed around his boots, and Damien followed with a crisp right hook that sent him sprawling onto the asphalt. Breathing hard, Damien offered his hand to the girl. She hesitated only a moment before slipping something in his palm. A polished star-shaped badge emblazoned with an alien face at its center. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice catching as she sprinted towards the bus stop, laptop bag bouncing against her hip. Damien watched her disappear into the distance, adrenaline still humming in his veins, and slipped the badge in his pocket. Proof that for once he wasn't invisible. After the alley fight, Damien didn't head straight home. Instead, he laced up his battered sneakers and set off on a 10-mile run through the decaying streets of the Fifth Ward, each mile marker a throb in his temples. Kobach's hulking form still sat on the street near where the gym entrance where Damien had punched him. And as Damien passed, the dealer rasped, "You're going to pay for this, kid." Heartbeat settling in a steady rhythm as the city's grime and noise melted behind him. When he finally returned to his crumbling house, his chest still warmed with exultation, he found his father hunched over the kitchen table. His arms were quivering as if each breath caused him agony. The kitchen light carved harsh shadows across his features. He was once the celebrated welter champion of 3 counties, now a gaunt and desperate junkie. Damien's mother cowered against the counter, her cheeks flushed, a bruised purple halo around a faded handprint on her cheek, lips trembling in silent terror. His father's eyes flared when he saw Damien. "You beat up the only man who will still do business with me, who still treats me with any kind of respect," he snarled, voice thick with equal parts pride and fury. Without hesitation, Damien stepped up to him. "Dad, he was hurting someone." Damien's dad's arms clenched and his fists flew up. In a sudden burst born of fear and defiance, Damien drove a straight punch into his father's shoulder, then pivoted and unleashed a hook that snapped against his jaw. The ex-champ fell backwards with a grunt, boots scuffing the linoleum. But triumph was fleeting. His father recovered in an instant, fury sharpening his movements into a brutal storm. Fists rained down on Damien's ribs and face, each blow echoing like thunder in the small kitchen. His mother's screams shredded the air as his father kicked him in the side, spitting cruel words. "I never wanted you. You're nothing." With each strike, finally, with a savage shove, he sent Damien crashing through the front door like a broken doll, boots crunching as his father's parting kick drove the air from him. Damien lay in the alley, head ringing, blood matting against his curly hair. Every breath a razor's cut. From somewhere inside the house came a sudden bang, like an engine backfiring. His vision blurred behind the blood, and he couldn't tell if the door slamming or something far more ominous. Crawling on his hands and knees, breath ragged, he dragged himself deeper into the darkness. every heartbeat protesting until the city swallowed him once more. Damien's vision swam as the alley lights flickered until three figures drifted down through the haze of dusk and sparks. The first was Bryn, a towering behemoth, whose granite-cracked skin glowed faintly in the gloom. He knelt beside Damien, and his gravel-soft voice bubbled like a mountain brook. "There's a childling over here, and he looks badly hurt." Over Bryn's shoulder hovered Harris, slender wings folded tight behind her back, her eyes sharp as turbine blades, flicked from Damien's broken form to Bryn's sympathetic gaze. "Leave him," she hissed, urgency sharpening every featured edge of her tone. Above them all, Commander Oro, horned and broad-shouldered, crimson and gold reflecting in his fierce eyes as well as adorning his velvet skin. He surveyed the scene, silent for a heartbeat that stretched into eternity, then inclined his head. Bryn rose, careful not to shift Damien's broken ribs. As the squad's transports hummed in the distance, Damien's battered lungs found a gasp. Pain lanced through him, but the fire burned bright beneath his ribs. He reached a trembling hand into his pocket and felt the star-shaped badge pressed there, its alien visage against his palm, reminding him of the Houston skyline's glittering spires, of the dreams too big for these dark streets. "Take me with you," he rasped, voice ragged but resolute. "I can still fight. I can learn." With a surge of strength born of desperation, he clutched at Harris's cloak. The engineer's wings fluttered, surprised, but Oro's deep rumble cut through the night. "Bring him." As Bryn and Harris lifted Damien between them, Oro turned back toward the sky above. The Crimson One's engines shone like twin stars, ready to carry this wounded childling far from Earth's broken alleys and into a universe that might finally see him as more than nothing. A slender wand tracing a slashing arc of yellow across Damien's chest and face. Pain unraveled into warmth, and the world went white. Damien woke in a chamber, suffused with soft bioluminescence. Vines of living light coiled around metal walls, casting gentle shadows across the floor. A figure stepped forward, tall and serene, her skin a soft leafed green hue, and her hair woven of vines and delicate blossoms. "Welcome to the Crimson One, a phalanx rescue ship," she said, voice like wind through the leaves. "You're safe now." She offered him a gentle smile. "What is your name, child?" Damien's throat burned. He rasped, "Who are you calling a child?" The words cut sharper than any blade. She faltered, pupils dilating in surprise. Damien's gaze drifted to her face, her eyes wider than any he'd seen, delicate features framed by living blossoms. She was so stunning, more stunning than any girl from his school, almost unreal. Realizing he's staring, he snapped his head away, and pain exploded behind his eyes. "It's not polite to stare," came a low voice from the darkness on his left. "Easy, child." Commander Oro rumbled, stepping into view. His velvet dark skin and soaring horns filled the doorway. "You were hurt far more than we realized. This is Silkessa, our foremost healer. She has reattached your ribs, repaired your left lung, and restored your right leg and your arm." He paused, gaze softening. "You were in quite a scuffle." Damien squeezed his eyes shut as a flashback tore through his mind. His father's twisted glare, each kick, the stifled cries of his mother. He swallowed hard and remembered the words that had cracked from his lips before his world went white. "Take me with you. I can fight. I can learn." He opened his eyes and whispered, "I meant what I said. I can fight, and I can learn." Silkessa offered him a reassuring nod, her sorrowful eyes brightening with something that felt like hope. Outside, the engines of the Crimson One thrummed, ready to carry them and Damien's battered spirit into the vast unknown. Commander Ororo's thunderous voice echoed through the bioluminescent chamber. "We are approaching planet Phoenix," he intoned. "You are far from Earth now." Damien's laugh trembled at first, then swelled into a wild, joyous crescendos. Anything was better than the alleys, the cold shame, and the makeshift bed of pain. The commander's horn brow furrowed. He studied the trembling boy before him. "Do you seek glory? To fight for worlds beyond your imagining?" Damien's smile faded as the weight of his battered ribs reminded him of every blow. He reached out, fingers digging into Ororo's crimson cape. "I can fight. Give me a chance." Silence hung heavy. Then Ororo's rumble returned, softer this time. "Why were you left in that alley, child? What of your parents?" Damien closed his eyes, shame burned hotter than any wound. Ororo stepped forward, voice gentler. "You've seen so much and lost so much, yet here you stand, wounded but unbroken." He laid a massive hand on Damien's shoulder. "Then rise, Damien. Your fight has only just begun." Damien's lips parted to shout, to celebrate, only to feel the world tilt beneath him. In an instant, the bioluminescent chamber gave way to a vast expanse of color and emotion. The Crimson One hurtled through the star-sprinkled skies above the Phoenix's red canopy, the Claw Fighter's engines humming a deep, resonant chorus beneath Damien's feet. Through the narrow portholes, streaks of distant suns and nebula clouds blurred into ribbons of light. Far below, the scarred outline of the Phalanx city glowed like a wounded heart, a silent testament to the life he had left behind. He was no longer broken. He was no longer the sad, crushed boy who crawled through the alleys of trash and pain. Every ache in his ribs, every scar on his skin, every memory of loss pulsed through him like a living fire. And yet, as the engines reverberated through his bones and the endless cosmos stretched before him, Damien felt something new unfurl within. An ember of purpose, a bright and defiant light. He closed his eyes for a moment, inhaling the electric air of the fighter's cabin, and when he opened them again, he was no longer nothing.
Hi there. This is the narrator, AJ the producer. I just wanted to say thank you so very much if you listened to the very end. This has been the adventures of the Crimson One. Please like and subscribe to follow Damien Rey as he grows up as an adventurer in the Phalanx Navy, along with characters like Ororo, Blizzard, Echo. We hope that you like this, and we'll tune in again.